Hello and welcome to episode 111 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Camille Fetter, founder and CEO of Talentfoot Executive Search and Staffing. With more than 20 years of experience evaluating top-tier talent, Camille has developed a deep understanding of what makes great leaders stand out, and communication is right at the center of it. In this episode, Camille shares the communication traits that define A players, why listening is the foundation of leadership, and how strategic silence can elevate your executive presence. She also opens up about how operating as her authentic self, not two versions of herself, transform both her career and her impact. Camille brings a rare mix of warmth, wisdom, and business acumen to the conversation, and I know you're going to take away some practical strategies you can apply right away. Let's dive in. Camille, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Scott, for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Really, thank you. Really looking forward to our conversation. Before we jump into it, maybe tell the listeners just a little bit about you, your career background, and the great work that you're doing today.
Yeah, you got it. So I'm a mom, I'm a partner, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a business owner, and I'm a founder. And I know that your podcast is all about communication. And I share that because all of these roles in my life really do shape how I lead and, most importantly, how I communicate. Would you like me to share a little bit about my background?
That would be great.
So I began my career in advertising. I was focused heavily on analytics, working in Excel all day. And while I loved the field of advertising, I quickly realized I really wanted to be in more of a people-centered profession. And then I had this chance of meeting with a recruiter, and that completely changed my path. I spent 2.5 years in staffing, 4 years at a global executive search firm, and then launched my own firm, Talentfoot Executive Search, 15 years ago. Being a founder and a CEO really does mean that your role is constantly evolving. Similar to parenting, the job description is always changing, right? So with the fact that your people are constantly evolving, your business is evolving, the market continues to evolve, that does evolve our roles. And it, most importantly, for context for your audience, it impacts and evolves how we communicate. I'm very passionate about this topic, and I look forward to jumping into it with you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially around the context of, in essence, who you are, all these different things, all these different roles that you play. And I absolutely feel you as a parent of teenagers. I thought I had it all figured out. Then we hit those teen years. I'm like, oh, okay. Things a little bit different, a little bit of a curveball. Need to maybe change the way I communicate there. Just like in work, things are going well. Oh, here's a global pandemic, or oh no, here's AI, or oh, here's
That's
all
right.
these different things that come in and change things. And I agree, communication plays such a big part in all of that and how you can continue to be successful and grow both in your life and in your career. So as I think about your role founding an organization, serving as CEO of an organization, and really working in this executive recruitment space, I would imagine you come into contact with a lot of folks that are great communicators, perhaps maybe some not so much. But if you think about that, when you hear that somebody is a great communicator or that they have very strong communication skills, what's the image that comes to mind for you, or what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. So we typically are screening, it could be upwards to 20 candidates in a given day, right? And so our job is to really determine who the A players are and who maybe aren't the A players, right? And so what does that come down to? It comes down to typically vetting their communication skills. And so I will tell you, after 20 years in this business, I can identify an A player typically within the first 2 minutes of a phone call. And that all comes down to communication. So in my opinion, great communication starts with deep curiosity. It's about asking the right questions, and equally of importance, it's not dominating the conversation, right? Great communicators also, they really know how to distill complexity into clear messages. They communicate with confidence and they respect the airtime, right? They don't take up the entire phone call, right? They don't take up the entire interviews talking about themselves. They also, know how to bring the right energy to the room and passion, and deliver messages with persuasion. So, it's definitely art and science, but starting with really deep curiosity and being able to distill complexity into simplicity, to me, makes for the best communicators.
The art and science of it is a great way to put it. And hitting on one of the things that you touched on, this idea of around not only asking questions, but asking the right questions, right? The science of it is, yes, you need to ask questions, you need to get the other person talking. The art of it is, okay, what are the right questions based on the context, but also how you're asking them, not only how you're phrasing them and the specific words that you're using, but making sure that you're not just rapid fire, almost feeling like you're interrogating somebody. As you
Yes.
mentioned, you want to have that balance in there so it feels like a conversation, whether it's a sales meeting, an interview that you're going on, a podcast discussion, or something with your friend. You really want to have that natural flow of conversation.
Yeah, that's really well said, Scott. So, what I would probably drive home for your audience is the listening skills really do fuel your communication skills, right? So, without the listening, it's almost impossible to be a great communicator. And as the saying goes, there's a reason we have two ears and one mouth.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to listening, as you were talking, made me think about this at the executive level. Typically, they're very good listeners. And it somewhat seems counterintuitive because a lot of times people somewhat make the excuse of it's hard for them to listen because they're so busy. They have so many things going on, so many competing priorities, phones going off, meetings coming up. But executives are dealing with all of that at a much more elevated level, but yet they are still focusing on the listening because, as you mentioned, it is an absolutely foundational, critical skill to effective communication.
Yeah, without a doubt. Same with parenting, right? I use a lot of analogies comparing leadership to parenting, because it really is no different, right? And so learning how to ask the right questions, but then listen for the answers. So typically, I'm a huge note taker. So my listening, I process information by taking notes, right? So as I'm absorbing some of the answers to my questions, I'm taking notes and it's actually prompting my next question, right? So I'm big on preparation, right? Preparation does help set up your ability to extract the information that you're looking to extract, right? To basically get a team moving in the right direction or to gather the insights that you need to do your job more effectively. But really, having that prepared outline and knowing where and when to pivot based on what you've heard from the previous questions you've asked. So there is a little bit of you got to think on your feet,
Mhm.
and prepare to really hone your communication skills.
Yeah, I think when you prepare, it really does enable you to listen that much better because if I've done my homework and maybe I come to the table with a handful of questions that I know that I'm going to ask or I would like to ask or I can ask maybe as a fallback, if I know I have those in my pocket, I'm not worrying about, oh gosh, what am I going to ask Camille next? If you're thinking that, you're not listening. It's impossible to be thinking of that while truly listening and digesting. So I agree, preparing and then the other big component I always share with people is getting comfortable with silence and getting comfortable with pausing.
Yes.
As you do that, it's going to allow you to really process, come up with something insightful, and then it's going to signal to that other person, I was listening. I wasn't just waiting for you to stop talking. I truly was listening.
Absolutely. So I'll share an early career insight with you. So I was probably I'm 44 today. I was probably 24 at the time. So this is about 20 years ago. And I was working in the bullpen, right? And I had a boss who could overhear my conversations on the phone. And he said, "You need to slow down." And it stopped me in my tracks. It was clear I felt this pressure to speak quickly and fill every silence, right? And I learned that slowing down actually embracing the pauses. It builds confidence, it builds executive presence, and it builds authenticity, right? And so And as you know, as you just shared, silence, when used intentionally, can actually be really powerful. Silence is not empty, it's strategic.
Spot on. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Sometimes when I go through and edit these episodes after, I'm like, oh wow, this was really good. This guest did a great job. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to trim this pause down a little bit just to keep the episode flowing. But yeah, it is such a challenging thing because, as you mentioned, most people are they feel compelled to close the silence, to close those gaps. They don't want that silence, but doing it really will transform your communication. And I think, as you mentioned, transform how you are perceived, and it elevates that presence.
Absolutely. And one tip that that same boss had provided me at that time, he said, "Hey, Camille, I want you to go watch some videos of some Fortune 1000 CEOs speak publicly and take note of their cadence and how quickly and slowly they speak and when they use pauses to drive home a message." And it's something that I probably need to revisit and do more often. But I thought that was really great wisdom that he shared with me early on that hopefully some of your listeners can take with them.
So we've talked a little bit about listening and pausing and questioning. As you're out there and you're working with organizations that are looking to source, top level talent, what are you hearing from them that are some of these must have soft skills, so to speak, right? We understand there's the technical skills or the hard skills that people may be looking for, but what are you hearing from clients either where they're explicitly putting it in the job rec or just in your conversations with them as they're talking about their ideal candidate?
So they're looking for a couple things. They're looking for, and we touched on this earlier on here, the ability to solve complex business problems, right? And so, in order to solve complex business problems, you have to learn how to ask the right questions, which we've talked about, draw the right key insights, and then translate that into strategy and implementation. And how are you going to get a team, a function, an organization to all row in the same direction against your strategy and ensure that you're implementing the right KPIs, key performance indicators are in place, right? All of the measurement tools to know that, hey, this strategy is working and it's actually moving the dial in the direction we need it to move, right? And so it's there's a lot of our confidential searches are up 30% because organizations are tired of lackluster talent not moving the needle, right? And maybe just working in the clouds on strategy all day, but not actually getting teams to execute. So that's a common one right now, and it does come back to, are they an inspirational, motivational leader? Can they really articulate strategy and then put the right frameworks in place to get teams to execute, and then of course measure, right? So hopefully those are some general
Mm-hmm.
insights that are helpful for your audience.
And when I hear that, a lot of times when I hear somebody that can take complex information and break it down so other people will understand it, how they can
Yes.
motivate people, move people to action, clearly articulate something, the thing that comes to mind for me is storytelling.
Yes.
Great leaders use stories, and you touch on you like to use a lot of analogies. You like to compare things between leadership and family. For me, storytelling is a great way for a leader to set themselves apart, both in, say, a search function where they're trying to get a new job and they're in the interview process. But as you're working with your teams, you're working with clients, as you can take a complex topic and find some sort of story, whether it is a past example story or it is some sort of connecting it to something in the personal life that people would realize, that's how you get people to buy into your message.
I could not agree more. And that actually, I think, is a big, has been a big piece of why my career has been successful is the fact that I'm able to connect the dots for individuals, right? And I do that by making people feel seen, making them feel understood, being personable, being human, and matching that warmth with the business acumen, right? But with the storytelling allows you to be human and then tying that to business acumen to me is the secret sauce to a lot of success in business. And then getting everybody to focus on the right results and doing it while being a concise, clear communicator and not overcomplicating things.
And you actually segued very nicely into what I wanted to talk about next. So thank you for that. Is if you think about your career success, one of the themes that I just picked up on there as you were talking about was authenticity, right? You're kind of connecting, making sure there's a connection between the warmth and how you're communicating and what you're saying and bringing in stories that humanize you. If I were to ask someone close to you, whether it was a colleague or a family member, if I were to ask them, what has been the key communication skill that has helped Camille get to where she is today and have the success that she's had? What would they share with me?
I would say authenticity, right? I early on in my career, I thought I had to have two versions of myself. I thought I had to be professional Camille, and then I could be fun Camille on weekends or nights and weekends, right? And then it dawned on me one day, I'm like, this is exhausting, right? Having two versions of myself, right? It's exhausting. And so I realized that, you know what? I'm just going to move forward with one version of myself. And I'm going to show up to work like I show up on weekends, and I'm going to show up with my clients as I do my friends in my personal life. And actually, it not only became less exhausting, but work became more fun, more fulfilling, and I built stronger relationships with those around me. And when you have stronger relationships, professionally, everything works better, right? People feel more inspired and connected to you as a leader to do their best work. And clients and customers that we serve, right? They feel understood because we take the time to really connect with them on a personal level. And it's all about being human, right? And so when you're a corporate matchmaker like us, everybody wants to feel seen and heard in the process because, we are placing people on leadership teams where they spend more time with these individuals they hire than their own families, right? So we need to understand who they are and what motivates them and what makes them tick. So hopefully that's helpful.
I'm glad that you brought up this idea of really feeling exhausted at the end of the day. And that's a great signal for people listening to this that if at the end of your client meetings or at the end of giving a presentation or a meeting at work, if you feel exhausted from that, it's a good chance because there's a big disconnect between how you're communicating there versus really your true communication style. Now, there's going to be some variance, right? If you're presenting to the board, you might have to tweak what I like to say, kind of tweak the style a little bit to understand your audience. But really, the core of who you are should be the same. If you are a very energetic, upbeat, boisterous type of person at home, and then you're trying to be very subdued at work or vice versa, there's that disconnect. One, you're going to feel it, and then it's going to show through in your work. And people are going to pick up on that disconnect, and it's going to come across as disingenuous, inauthentic. It's going to hurt your personal brand and likely impact your career outcomes.
No, I could not have said it any better. That's exactly right. And so the light bulb went off for me around 26 years old. Better late than never, right? But I guess that's fairly, early on in my career too. So if I could give, rising professionals and established professionals one piece of advice, if they're feeling drained, to your point, is to check themselves and are they operating in two different worlds, or are they allowing themselves to be themselves at any and all times? And I promise you, it will make your work far more fulfilling.
Spot on. Camille, as you think about your career journey and the style that you've developed with your communication, who has been someone from throughout your life or your career that has impacted the way that you communicate? And maybe what's something specific that you picked up from them and have you tweaked and made your own?
Sure. So I am told often, well, Camille, you don't have a boss, right? You work for yourself. You're the founder and CEO. And my response is, I have a lot of bosses. I have hundreds of bosses. Who are they? Who are they? they're clients, right? My clients every day, our clients that we serve as a firm every day are my bosses. So I learn from them, right? I'm working with boards, investors, CEOs every day, and these are highly accomplished individuals who are typically hiring us to find the leaders to scale their businesses, right? We do a ton of work in go to market, technology, accounting, finance. These are individuals that have a proven track record and playbook to drive top and bottom line results. And so we're digging into these businesses and we're truly trying to understand, hey, what's your growth thesis? So you're 40 million today, you want to be 80 million in 4 years. Great. How do you believe you're going to get there? Right. And so I get to be a student every day of these organizations. It's like an MBA every day. And I get to hear how all of these leaders communicate their vision for their business. And so I get to take little pieces of their communication by way of being a consultant to these organizations, and I get to apply it to my own communication internally within the organization, and then how I show up for other clients. So I would say, I'm in observation mode and I take little pieces, whether it's body language or how they phrase maybe a complex subject and they distill it in a more simple fashion. I'm always kind of taking what I like, what I don't from the leaders that we serve and how they communicate every single day. And I do feel very blessed to be able to do that.
So first, an MBA every day, fantastic phrase. You might want to look and trademark that if that's not trademarked. Sounds like a great book title.
There you
As you
go.
have some in all your free time, you can go ahead and write a book. But
I like it.
it's a great point that you bring up that's important for everyone listening, regardless of the point you are in your career, is that every single engagement is a learning opportunity.
Yep.
You're going to learn something that you can do, something that you probably shouldn't do. And it can be, as you mentioned, something very, very as small as a body language, a gesture, a phrase, just something small, a nuance that somebody does that really can make a big difference in how they communicate. And as you pick these little things up all throughout your career, they begin to compound, right?
Yes.
I really like how this person pauses intentionally. Oh yeah, I like the way that this person gives feedback. Their body language when they're in front of a room. Something about the way that they're standing, the tone of their voice, the cadence, all of these things, they add up. And you just keep putting them in your tool belt and you practice them. That's a key part of all of this. You have to practice those skills. And before you know it, you have a great arsenal at your disposal that's going to continue to help you through all phases of your career and your life.
That's right. Be a student of people and it will serve you.
Camille, as we are wrapping up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for folks listening to this, really just in general, around the importance of the skills and the things that we talked about today and the impact it can have on their career?
Yeah, I would just say, great communication is truly, as we've talked about, how strategy becomes reality. And great leaders, they don't just speak well, they are able to create clarity, trust, and momentum for businesses and teams by the way of how they deliver messages, how they storytell, how they show up being human and authentic. It's going to be the most critical skill as technology and AI evolves our workforce by the hour. So I'm, very grateful for the work that you're doing, Scott. You're helping a lot of people, and this is a topic that does not get enough attention.
Well, thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. And you bring up a really good point where as technology is evolving so rapidly. I'm sure by the time we end this, a couple new AI tools are going to come out, and a new version of this is going to come out. So I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, well, technology is going to do all this. I don't really need to focus on communication skills. I would contend, and a little bit self-serving, right? But I would contend that these skills are going to be even more important as we go forward. The human element is going to continue to play a big part of that. And as you mentioned, understanding not only how to communicate with these tools and technologies, but then to communicate the outputs that you are getting from them, to communicate the impact that these new technologies are going to have on our clients, our lives, our business are going to be critical.
Yeah, absolutely. If anything, learning how to become a better prompt engineer with AI has actually translated to me being able to hone and refine how I ask questions when I'm not engaging with AI, right? So, yeah, everything that we've talked about, learning how to listen deeply, ask better questions, and use these skills to form authentic connections because these are the pieces that will not be automated by AI and will future-proof your career.
Love it. Camille, if folks want to connect with you, learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that? And I'll be sure to include it in the show notes.
Yes, thank you for asking. I would tell everybody to find me on LinkedIn, Camille Fetter. I believe there's only one of me in the executive search field. So find me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request, and I'd love to follow your continued success and be connected.
Perfect. Thank you, Camille. Really enjoyed the conversation. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Special thanks again to my guest, Camille Fetter, for joining us and offering such a thoughtful look at communication, leadership, and authenticity in action. As we close, here's a reminder inspired by Camille's message. Great communicators don't just talk well. They listen deeply, ask intentionally, and know when to pause. Whether you're leading a team, navigating change, or just trying to connect more meaningfully, how you show up in those moments is what sets you apart. Be sure to subscribe to Communicast so you don't miss future episodes with leaders and experts redefining what great communication looks like. And if this episode resonated with you, please leave a rating or review. It helps others discover the show and supports our growing community. Thanks for listening and have a great day.